So it's March, and as we know, Pokémon Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team DX, the much anticipated title announced at the beginning of the year, has now released. And since I'm a huge fan of this series, I thought I would offer my perspective and opinions on this new title in the form of a review right here. Without further ado, I will begin discussing the game. Pokémon Mystery Dungeon Red Rescue Team and Pokémon Mystery Dungeon Blue Rescue Team are the first entries in the long-running spin-off series, both released about 15 years ago for the Game Boy Advance and Nintendo DS respectively. These two titles had fairly middling reviews by major outlets at launch, but sold very well and became a favorite of many thanks to the engaging story, memorable characters, and simple yet challenging gameplay. These two titles led to the development of several sequels on the DS and 3DS, all of which continue the same gameplay style and heavy story focus. Unfortunately, in recent years, the Mystery Dungeon series has had an uncertain future, with the last title, Pokémon Super Mystery Dungeon, not selling exceptionally well, and the Pokémon Company's overall pivot from console spin-offs to mobile titles. It remained unclear whether a new Mystery Dungeon title would ever arrive until January 6th, 2020, when a Pokémon Nintendo Direct opened with the news that the two Rescue Team games would be getting a remake for Switch. The game then released 3 months later, and, like the original titles, received fairly middling reviews, though fan reception has been far warmer. I do really find it interesting that this specific series of titles has such a wide gulf between the opinion of reviewers and that of fans of the series. I'm not really sure exactly why that is, but it's noteworthy, certainly. So this game's visuals are actually freaking quite nice. The overall style works really well, especially in handheld mode, though it does also look decent on a TV as well. The watercolor visual direction is a great way to represent the artwork from the original game on a modern system, though the execution does often leave a bit to be desired. Unfortunately, the models look a bit blurry because of the watercolor-esque filter used on them, and facial features can be hard to make out. Another issue is the limited animations, which look pretty stiff and don't seem to have evolved much at all since the last Mystery Dungeon title on 3DS, which is pretty disappointing. The game also consistently has problems with frame rate, with slowdown occurring on a regular basis during gameplay and story sections whenever there are more than a few models on screen at once. Despite these undeniable glaring flaws, there are several moments which could easily be described as beautiful throughout, and the camera angles and 3D environments utilized in cutscenes make the world of Rescue Team feel more alive than was ever possible on the GBA or DS. While I do love the sprite work of the original games, seeing these memorable characters and locations with modern visuals was an incredibly worthwhile experience. I found the soundtrack of Rescue Team DX to be astoundingly good and near flawlessly executed. The music incorporates the sound style of the GBA and DS titles with more modern instrumentation, making the soundtrack feel nostalgic while also elevating the original material. The music used in key story moments can be especially impactful and emotionally compelling, which worked fantastically in tandem with the updated visuals. I'd say this is by far the best the series has ever sounded, and even if you don't intend to ever play Rescue Team DX, I implore you to listen to some of its music. It's simply excellent. The narrative of Rescue Team DX is just about completely unchanged from the original titles, but it still manages to be effective and engrossing so many years later. The base premise is simple. You, a human, have been transformed into a Pokémon, selected at the start of the game based upon your answers to a quiz. You join up with another Pokémon to form a rescue team, and you go around exploring and rescuing different Pokémons. The story never becomes particularly complicated, but it remains engaging throughout and features tons of memorable moments, several of which can be pretty emotional. I've loved the story of Rescue Team since I first played it, so it was a legitimately joyful experience to see it realized with modern visuals and music. The numerable cutscenes, as mentioned previously, have far more camera angles and visual effects than ever before, and do truly enhance the game's storytelling. The gameplay of Rescue Team DX at first glance might seem identical to that of the original titles, but upon closer inspection, it becomes clear that a substantial amount has been changed and streamlined. The satisfying core loop of dungeon exploration remains intact, but almost every system surrounding it has been altered in some way. For one, the basic attack has been completely removed, meaning you'll have to rely solely on your 4 traditional Pokemon attacks. there's also an all-new auto mode, in which you will automatically explore the dungeon, though you will be stopped if you encounter an enemy. I didn't really use this mode very much, though its presence should certainly be helpful to less experienced players. The hunger meter is now displayed in the UI, and depletes far faster than before, though more apples are provided to balance this out. Also far more common are Reviver Seeds, and the relatively new Tiny Reviver Seeds, which return from their debut in Super Mystery Dungeon. The Gummy and IQ system from Red and Blue Rescue Team has also been overhauled, with there now only being 2 different varieties of gummies, each of which just increase stats or provide rare qualities, another new addition to DX. Rare qualities each provide a different ability to your entire team, such as faster health regeneration, protection from explosions, or easier Pokemon recruitment. There are a wide variety to collect, and their impact on gameplay is often quite potent, and can make the game much easier in several circumstances. The maximum team size has also seen an increase, from 4 to 8. Having 8 different Pokemon on your team is certainly cool, but it did feel a bit overpowered during the main game, and made certain boss fights a bit too frictionless. One of my favorite gameplay alterations is in relation to late and post-game boss fights, where the arenas now dynamically change in interesting ways. This addition made the boss fights feel more special and cinematic, and I really hope that this feature returns in future Mystery Dungeon entries. Shiny Pokemon are another notable addition, though it is disappointing that only a select few made it into the game. It is also quite cool that a few different Pokemon from gens after 1 through 3 are included, though admittedly there aren't very many. Mega Evolutions also appear, which is a pretty fun addition that can be activated by using a special item. One of the less welcome changes is the streamlining of friend areas, now called camps. In the original 2 games, these were explorable environments where your recruited Pokemon would reside and could be interacted with. In Rescue Team DX, friend areas are essentially glorified menus, with artwork inspired by the previous interactive environments being displayed in the background. From a gameplay sense, the change is justified. It is far easier and less cumbersome to select Pokemon from a menu than it was to walk around looking for the one you wanted. However, I do still miss the more organic feeling of friend areas, and the replacement isn't something I necessarily agree with, even though the change does speed up the process of managing all your different Pokemon. It is also nice that the developers used camps as a place to display the original game's pixel art, so there are certainly upsides to the new system. I was pleased to see that the player rescue system, which previously required passwords, now has an online component, where you can rescue other players by making a selection from a list. This makes it far easier to be rescued by other players, as now all you have to do is upload your rescue request and wait for someone to complete it. A far simpler system than using painfully long passwords. In summation, all the changes I've listed make for a game which is generally speaking easier and more approachable than ever before. It certainly still does have moments of challenge, and you do still need to pay attention to reach the end of the game. I think this change is by and large a positive, as the GBA and DS games could be unforgiving at times, and by lowering the barrier of entry, perhaps more people will be able to enjoy this game to the fullest extent. Fortunately, the post-game does retain the rather sharp challenge the original had, with there being far more difficult and demanding dungeons made available upon completing the main story. So, Pokémon Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team DX is a compelling and justified remake of one of my favorite games. While not without its faults, the shocking amount of additions and strong visual identity make for a truly special experience, which is drastically different from the original. I'm really pleased that the Pokemon Company and Spike Chunsoft is still willing to continue this spin-off series, and I really do hope that this entry does well enough to lead to further sequels and or remakes. I would certainly recommend anyone who is interested in this game to check it out, and there's even a demo on the eShop to try out if you want to do that. This is a remake of one of my favorite Pokemon games, and I really hope that as many people as possible are able to appreciate it. So if this looks like something that piques your interest, definitely check it out, look at the demo maybe. It's a fun time. And all that is to say that this review is now over, and I've shared all my opinions on Mystery Dungeon DX.